I need you to imagine 2027, going far into the future. It's the end of the Northern Hemisphere summer, end of the Southern Hemisphere winter, and a plane has just touched down, and on this plane is the first ever British and Irish Lions women's team to be selected and to go on tour and to wear that red shirt. So we're at the launch of the Women's Lions today, and we're going to be talking to some people to find out more about what we can expect. We're joined by Niamh Briggs and Shauna Brown, an Irish and an English representative in a very tiny little broom cupboard here at the Battersea Power Station. How do you feel today, Niamh?
I'm very excited, genuinely buzzed. There's so much positivity about today. It's been huge. I think the atmosphere around the building today has been unbelievable, and so it's been a great day.
The atmosphere on this topic has not been consistently positive, Shauna. How did you feel when you got here today, and how do you feel now in comparison?
For me, I'm sort of leave negativity at the door, and when the negative comments come, my brain just doesn't process them anymore. And I've got to a stage, I'm like, I don't want to hear you, so it just shuts off. So even when you say, it's not been so negative, I'm like, I didn't know it's any negative, because my brain honestly doesn't take it in. And you get questions about, like, the two big questions are, is it going to be English dominated, which, by the way, the answer is categorically no, and should it be a woman head coach come it? But again, like, it's such a long way away, so let's not worry about that yet. Like, let's do today. Let's enjoy, let's celebrate, let's look forward to the future of British and Irish Lions.
Now, Niamh Briggs, outside being an absolute icon of the game in Ireland and 2 Six Nations titles, one of which you captained, you now hold a very important position within the big green machine. How are you going to ensure that there are enough Irish girls on that plane to New Zealand, but also in future tours? How do you guys address this representation question?
Yeah, look, I think because it's probably twofold. I think for number one, for the right now, is that you look across the water and a Premiership every week, and there's Scottish and Welsh and Irish players performing unbelievably well over there and don't look out of place and like excelling. And so that's there for the right now. And then for the future, the RFU have resourced a huge amount of resources into the game now, and we've decided that we've got to go from the foundation up as opposed from the top down. So we've got a lot of pathways, national talent squads we call them now, NTS players that are 15, 16, 17, 18, so that they start to understand what high performance behaviours are. They understand what it means to be an international rugby player, and we get them, it's all like a mini academy almost for now, so that when the time comes for them to make that jump into international rugby, that they're able to do that, and it's quite seamless. And I think that's going to be hugely important. I think because of the gaps and stuff that had happened before, I think if we had started just to pump a load of resources into the best 20 or 30 players in Ireland, then once they finish we wouldn't have anything coming through, and I think that's the biggest thing. So yeah, look, it's actually a really exciting time for Irish rugby.
Yeah, because you're building for the future. Now, Shauna, you put this in such an interesting way. You said women have been denied this opportunity previously, and you also said the Lions missed out on having Niamh Briggs play for them.
Yeah. That's not that.
Well, I did. It missed us. It did miss us, and like the question was, do we feel like we're going to miss out because we're not playing? Well, actually, no. The Lions missed out because they didn't have us playing, because they didn't exist as a women's side when we were playing. So, yeah, I said that.
Thanks. Compliment from an English
I love that.
player.
That solidarity is just beautiful. We're building it already. What's interesting is the last time we spoke about the Women's Lions, our friend Emily Scarrett, said the thing that a lot of people, and rugby is such a team sport, what a lot of people miss out is that the job of a coach is to look at a specific player within the context of the team that she plays in, and to go, in this current team, she doesn't get A, B, and C, and so that aspect of her game isn't showing up, but it's showing up in a club game, or it's showing up in, whatever other context you can observe her in, and you can go, do you know what, if I put Shauna alongside Niamh, that's going to be a completely different prospect. And so the job of the coach here is to look at each of these nations and each of the players that they have and go, if I combine the best of all of these different places, you might unlock a completely different player there.
But yeah, so much of it will be experimental, and actually there's never been a situation where neither myself has played together. Like, who knows what we could have done? And the job of the coach is not only going to be about the best players, but the best combinations.
You mentioned earlier that the WhatsApp group had been popping off from girls going, oh, it's on, it's happening, it's here. You sat down and you said, it's like rugby Christmas.
Yes.
Which WhatsApp group is this that is going off?
So just all of them. Current one, past one, past player one. And
The OG
group. I
group.
think, and no, there's genuine. Straight away when it got broke the other day, it was genuine excitement. We had Celtic Cup training that evening, and players were like, oh my God, did you see the news? I was like, no, what's the news? They're like, oh, there's a Lions tour. I was like, whoa.
They're like,
I couldn't say anything because I didn't know if we were allowed. So I was
drops,
like,
Mike.
so I was like, Genie Mike. So then they were all like, yeah, and they're all like thinking now, all of a sudden, I'd love to be on that plane. And it's like, how do I get on that plane? So now they're already thinking, okay, if I want to perform in 3 years' time, this is what I need to do now. So all of a sudden we're getting, from an Irish point of view, better players, we're creating better competitions, developing the game. And then when they go up against the likes of the other home nations, they're thinking, oh, I'm up against a player in the same position, and then, you know, she probably did better. Okay, so how do I elevate my game? So then we're continuously getting better players. So it's class.
Love that. You were in the steering group.
Yes.
You were part of this thing from like 10 months ago. How feisty was it? Did people have disagreements? Was there murder on the dance floor?
Yeah. No names, but
No names.
there was a few. You
No
go,
names.
"What?
No
Oh,
names.
what?" Or someone would come off mute and you go, you know, it's about to go.
I know, it was great. To be fair, Shauna and I, as players, and had spoken about a couple of non-negotiables, and they've carried through in them. So yeah, it's brilliant. It was really cool.
Non-negotiable, Shauna, number 1.
No quotas.
Low quotas. Number 2.
Had to tour. Very important. We didn't want a home. Points.
Okay. And that's it. Anything else?
Oh, it's a women's tour for women, as in we're not just copying the men's tour.
Yeah.
We're not just replicating in any way, shape or form the men's tour. And there's been a green light pretty much from the beginning that this is going to be about what the women needs, what the women's game needs.
Okay. Thank you so much for your work that you've put in. And I'm sure all the girls at your clubs now going,
She knew all along.
She knew all along and she didn't tell us.
She read those briefs really quickly. She knew nothing on Friday.
Yeah.
Whenever it was.
I didn't tell him. Yes.
Oh, wow. How sleuth. Okay. Thank you so much for joining us, girls. Found this guy. He almost ran away. Naughty cat. We're now joined by Ben Calverley, who's the British and Irish Lions CEO and also a member of the Lions Women's Feasibility Study Steering Group. This feasibility study, it took 10 months?
It took 10 months
10
or so,
months
yeah.
or
So
so.
started at the back end of 2021 and ran through into 2022. So yeah, about 10 months in total.
Talk to us about this feasibility study, because tons of people have so many questions about it. We haven't seen it. What did you learn from the experience?
So for us, it was really important that we took our time over this and we thought very carefully about whether a Lions women's team was the right thing for us to create. So we put together this feasibility study that was overseen by a panel that had representation from right across the game. Really importantly, we had players and fans on there and coaches, etc., because we wanted to know what they thought about this. We had experts from the women's game because we wouldn't pretend as a group to know exactly what's right for the growth of the women's game, and we had representation from each of our home unions. Now that feasibility study looked at, goodness me, everything you could imagine, right? From the commercial elements of a tour through to the level of player appetite for a tour, fan engagement, where would they like a tour to be, and so on and so forth. So the reason why it took 10 months is because it was incredibly detailed, and it helped make sure that we're making decisions that are in the best interests of the women's game, not just the Lions.
And it's a commercial concern. This is, at the end of the day, business, and it makes business sense.
It does make business sense, it does, yeah. So a crucial consideration for us was whether or not this would be commercially sustainable and commercially viable. So we did lots of modelling, and I won't go into the detail of the financial modelling, but the end of that demonstrated absolutely that this is a commercially viable proposition, not just for the Lions, of course, but also for the hosts, right? We want our hosts to do well out of this, and all of our modelling demonstrates that we both will. But really importantly, what we've now got is real-world evidence. A feasibility study is one thing, but that's based on predicting what the future will deliver. Now we have deals that have been done that tell us the interest in the Lions Women's Tour is incredibly high and actually surpasses what we anticipated at feasibility stage.
So talk to me about the host then, New Zealand. This is something that a lot of people have criticised because it feels like it's a copy and paste job from the men's game. Have you worked with World Rugby, and what has that working with World Rugby looked like?
So we've worked with all stakeholders across the game. So yes, World Rugby, but if you mention any other part of the ecosystem, then they would have been part of our discussions on this as well. And we were really clear, this is not a copy and paste job. Right? So there are certain things that are baked into the Lions DNA that we think it's important to retain. So we want this to be a touring team. In other words, we play in another country and we have a high community impact. We want there to be a test series at the end of the tour against single country opposition, and we want it to be against the best of the best. And the Black Ferns obviously give us that as back-to-back world champions. But beyond that, all bets are off. So there's a blank sheet of paper. And interestingly, when we look ahead to the future, we could see a very different situation where our assumption is not that we follow the rotation that applies to the men. And you could see, if you think about countries that might be interesting to us, maybe in for future tours, you could see a Tour to France being incredibly compelling. We know the States is hosting World Cups men and women in 31 and 33. That's a really interesting market for us, and I think the players would love to engage in those two countries. So let's see what the future holds, but this is potentially very different to the men's game.
Does this put the pressure on, from a representation perspective, on the 4 home nations? Because so many people are putting a question mark around how much Scottish representation there would be, how much Welsh representation there would be, and the same for Ireland. But I mean, in the men's game, our producer crunched the numbers. In 2021, Scotland had 8 men touring. In 2017, 2. In 2013, 4. And in 2009, 4. No one looks at the results of those men's tours and makes a decision based on the equal representation there. They just go, that was a great Lions tour because of the work that was done on that tour. Talk to me about representation and the result that instituting a women's Lions tour right now at this point will have on the other nations to step up.
So it's a really good point that you make, and you're right. Representation historically has gone up and down across all the different countries on the men's side. For the women's game, we're really clear that this has to be the best of best. So we're not going to apply any quota that says there has to be a certain number of players from each of the 4 countries. The best players will be selected irrespective of which union they come from. But we work really closely with the unions to try and make sure that we can use the Lions to add value to what they're doing. Now, we know they're all at a slightly different stage in their journey when it comes to the growth of the women's game, but we're confident in the work that they're doing. And what we think we can provide now is there's something around the inspirational quality of the Lions. We hope that this is an aspiration that helps bring more women and girls into the game. We also think there's an exposure piece here. The interest we're seeing from broadcasters is really high, so there's something people can look at and get excited about. But let's not forget that we are making an investment here directly into the growth of the women's game, a financial investment supported by Royal London into the pathways of each of our 4 home unions. So hopefully we'll see more players and coaches capable of being selected for the tour in 27.
Thank you so much for joining us, Ben.
You're very welcome. Thank you.
I think he's giving me the cold shoulder because the girls are taking over. Do you know Billy is a girl's name, like with an IE? At least let me just put in a French plat because you really can't play with it like this. We could use gel and it'll wash out, don't worry. I've managed to flag down, I think, one of the most important people here today. Don't tell any of the other very important people. Sarah Niblock, the head of sponsorship at Howen Group. Sarah, thank you for joining me. What does Howen do?
Well, Howden are an independent insurance brokers, and it means we're not an insurance company, we're the brokers, so we help people get insurance, and we're the biggest insurance broker in Britain, and it's now got about 16,000 staff, so we've grown massively in a very short period of time.
And you've decided to become the title sponsor, not only of the Lions, the men's, the British and Irish Lions, but also of the inaugural British and Irish Lions women's tour to New Zealand in 2027. Why?
Well, the basic reason is we wanted to sponsor the Lions, and the deal was if we cannot get the women, we will not do the men. And that was it right from the start. We must have that parity and equality across the board with our support of rugby as a sport.
Why?
because it's so important to us to make sure that everybody's represented. It happens across our company and we want it to happen across sport. And not just equality, it's more equity. It's to get that level playing field with everybody.
For you personally, undeniable Scottish accent, deep history in the game in Scotland, having worked with the Scottish men's team for a long time. What does this mean to you personally?
This is such a massive step in the sport, full stop. I love this sport, whether it's men's rugby, women's rugby, sevens rugby, any level. I think rugby is a fantastic sport, both on and off the pitch. So I will do anything I can to foster it and promote it.
And of women's rugby not as a value add to the men's game, but as the crown jewel in this whole deal.
Yeah. It is completely the thing that makes the deal for us is to be able to be a partner across both men and women equally, be a principal partner of both the men's team and the women's team. And as I said earlier, if that wasn't available, we wouldn't have done the deal. But we wanted to do the deal and just made sure that everything was included so we could have that equality across the board for both types of the game.
I have goosebumps. I genuinely have goosebumps.
Shut up.
I love that so much. It makes my little heart make somersaults. It's so pretty. Amazing. Thank you, Sarah.
You're very welcome. Very welcome.
And here we go.
Yeah, bring it on.
Here we go.